on up and get set up. I don't know if you're going to sit, stand, or do handstands, whatever you're going to do. But if you, kids, the front rows are open. So is there any kids that would like to come up here and sit on the front row? This is Sorry Sunday, right? We forgot to do this earlier. You guys were supposed to be up. Come on up. Come on. Yep. All kids up front rows. There you go. Now we're getting traction. See all these kids coming? You guys are being left out. This is awesome. Any more Richmond kids come up to distract Elijah? That would be amazing. All right. I think we've filled this up, and I think your attention span will handle that. All right, man. I'm excited to hear your story, what God has given you to share to us.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, this is new for me. I want to start by saying this is a wild thing for me to do, a wild place for me to be up in front of the church. It doesn't feel as wild, I guess, as I thought it would. Certainly not what I would have thought a couple of years ago. Frankly, what I'd like to do today is just bring you up to speed on who I was and who God's making me. Because this body is just so good. This church is so good. God's so good. 2 years ago, I hardly ever would have left the house even to go to church. I was jaded. And I was jaded by a lie. It wasn't the church. It wasn't in fact, the theme you'll hear is that every time I needed the church, it was there for me. I wasn't there for it. And God gave me a new start. He led me through a struggle that I lived for years silently, and here he let it all out. He laid me open before the church, and where I was afraid of rejection, I found acceptance. I found grace. And I met Jesus in a way I never have before. So yeah, it's hard to condense, I guess, 10 years of life into just 2 hours, but we'll see what we can do to get started. So I was born in the far-off land of Sturgis, Michigan. I was raised in a family that loved God and part of a school and a church that filled me with the Word. I had so many people around me. My pastors, my teachers, my friends who were all, we wanted to do what God wanted us to do. We wanted to live the work of the Word. It was good. My family came from a pattern of breaking through family sin patterns. My grandfather was an immensely talented man, but he was held back by alcoholism. And he drank like a fish and smoked like a chimney up until just a few months before he died. He finally gave his life to Christ, and I'm looking forward to catching up with him someday. But my father said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go down that road, and he didn't. My mom and dad, they gave a lot to make sure that I was in church, that I was given a Christian education, that I would have a future that, that would be honoring to God and to their call as my parents. And I remember a word from Scripture that came up. time and again. The word, and I'd stop here and just say that the devil knows the scriptures. He knows them inside and out. And the verse, to whom much is given, much is required. It was twisted in me. I don't know how it started. It's a lie from the enemy that I believed. At some point I chose to believe that I had been given so much, I needed to do so much with it. That if I wasn't achieving, if I wasn't the upper echelon of good Christian boy, I was a failure. I hadn't met the mark. Much was given, and I didn't have enough to give back when it was required. So I was driven by achievement. I wanted to deliver more and better results academically, spiritually. I wanted to be the guy that folks would look to and turn to when they had a problem. And I didn't want to let anybody down. Not my family, not my teachers, not my pastor, not anybody. I'm not perfect, actually, as it turns out. Nowhere close. And when those mistakes came, when I couldn't hold myself to this unmeetable standard, I was broken. My biggest fear was the words, "I'm disappointed in you." I think that might come as a shock to a lot of people who knew me back then, but it was the truth. My parents knew when they tried to, again, this was a lie from the enemy. And there's nothing else to say. There's no one else to blame. No one's at fault. I grew up well. But the pressure started building. And as I got older, little mistakes piled up, started to haunt me. Finally, I got something that I thought, oh man, this was a big one. This is going to do me in. Did you guys know that girls don't actually have cooties? They're a myth. Actually, if they do have cooties, I think then cooties must be pretty cool. I had people who poured into me on that topic. I think I missed the birds and the bees conversation by about a couple of months, maybe. And when that conversation came and it was had, I thought, oh my goodness, I've been. My mind is not in the right place. My heart's not in the right place. I'm thinking things that should not be thought, and I felt guilt, and I felt, oh, this is it. If I admit to this, like, people are gonna know that I'm a no good. I'm just like everybody else. See, everybody knew it. It's no secret. Girls have cooties. But I didn't speak up. I didn't wrestle it out. I felt like it would be disappointing. Now, we didn't have much internet in my house. When we did, the computer was right there, in plain view of everybody. So I didn't have, thankfully, I didn't have big struggles with pornography, with things like that. But I did struggle. It was rough. I had something in my heart that I needed to work through, and I wouldn't do it. I thought, I can do this on my own. I have all the tools. I know the word. Why do I need to tell anybody about it? They're just going to tell me the scripture. So I would always go, I remember we would have youth camps, and at youth camp there'd be a campfire at the end of it usually, and there'd be a moment where they'd say, well, if you have a struggle, confess it to God now, throw a stick in the fire, like give it over to him. And I said, okay. I struggle with cooties. I struggle with guilt. I'm too hard on myself. I know I am. But I would throw my stick in the fire, and they were watching you. They knew what they were doing. They'd see that you would throw a stick in the fire and be like, I'm going to go and talk. I'm going to follow up with somebody after this. I'm going to talk to them about it. They did. And in that moment, the fear would come rushing back in. People are going to find out. What are they going to find out? I don't know. That I'm a human? That I am not perfect? That I have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God? Say it ain't so. Who's like that? But I would say, I've been struggling a little bit with sometimes I'm too proud. I just felt like I needed to recommit my life to Christ in that moment. Then I'd walk away from that conversation and leave the hurt, the guilt unanswered. Eventually, I felt too guilty about it as I failed time after time again. I would throw the stick in the fire, be like, all right, I've done the stick. It's gone now. Surely. I felt too guilty to pray for forgiveness anymore. Every so often, I would just sit down in the entryway of our house, and I had a dog. He was big, good yellow lab. He's a good boy. And I would just sit down and I would dump it all out on him. I was sick of bringing this before the Lord. I'll tell my dog about it. He doesn't care. But, dogs have an expiration date. And right before my freshman year of college started, I carried the struggle all through high school. Right before freshman semester started, I had to put the dog down. And then I had to leave home. I had to leave everybody who knew me, probably knew more about me than I did, that I was willing to admit about myself. And I went to school. Now I was not the good kid. I was that weird guy, I thought. I didn't vocalize it, but I didn't really want to go to school at all. I didn't think it was necessary. I'd always been good with books. I'll just learn it all myself. I didn't really enjoy being around people my age. I felt like I'd be judged. I don't know. So I isolated myself. So here I'm going to pause. And I'm going to introduce you to the Elijah of that year. I love this jacket. I still do. There we go. I fished out my class ring, bright and shiny. I'm wearing it today. And my wedding band, I had a little ring with a cross on it. And if you do this, it spins. It had a cross on it. And it was a purity ring or something like that. That's what I called myself. I didn't feel very pure in mind, but woo. There. There we go. You're clapping for this guy, but he was kind of a jerk. I was convinced that this altar call stuff, this small mission, I went on short-term missions trips. They didn't move the needle on the struggles that I had. I thought, well, they just don't work. If I and all of my, everyone pouring into me, giving me so much, are you detecting the arrogance that was covering up my brokenness? I was using it as a defense. If it didn't move the needle for me, why would it move the needle for anybody? I had had so many people pouring into me for so long. Surely I was ideal Christian. If it can't change me, then why not? So I picked a few favorite things. My favorite book of the Bible, Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. My favorite song was Hurt by Johnny Cash, the Johnny Cash version. You know, I will let you down, I will make you hurt. It's my fears in a lyric. If you thought you were going to meet Jesus at an altar call, I'd see folks walking down the aisle at chapel, at school. I went to Cedarville University. I said, good luck with that. If you like modern worship music, sorry, it's hymns or rock. Ask me why, I couldn't tell you. If you felt a call to missions or to preach, well, all I can say to you, buddy, is have fun being a victim of the theological industrial complex. I was a little stuck in my own head. There was a student paper on campus that was funded actually by a left-wing PAC, political activists. They all were. They would write about stuff week after week. They would say, firstly, I was mad at them for a number of reasons. They were theologically inaccurate. And I knew that. I knew that down pat. They were struggling openly with all the things: identity, politics, being liberal students on a Baptist campus. And I got so fed up reading their stuff day after day. I had to read it. I couldn't have just walked away. I had to argue with them on social media. I had to do that. I had to do all the things. I was really bitter. I walked up to him one day, and there were students. They were handing out copies of this thing. And I walked up to him with a grin on my face. He handed me a piece of the paper. I took it, 2 or 3 of them actually, and then I stuffed it down into the trash can right next to him. And then I walked away with that silly, stupid grin on my face, like I had just done something big. See, Jesus, I still care about the truth. I later learned that one of those guys passed away in a freak train crash. And don't get me wrong, ultimately, everyone's responsible for their own souls, and God is not willing that any should perish, but looking back, the witness that I was to those people, I was giving them exactly what they wanted and exactly what they probably didn't need to see. So all the pressure that I had, it built up past the boiling point. I was boiling over. I was always thinking. I was never resting. I was never just being. And God hit me. Well, he used circumstances to hit me pretty hard. I was in school, and I was just nearing the end of my first semester when I got a call on the phone. I stepped into the prayer room to take it, and your sister died. Your sister's dead. All of a sudden, nobody saw it coming. I sank to the ground on the spot, and I just sat there for a while. I had so little left from just the day-to-day existing, all my bitterness, that I couldn't even cry. So I prayed. I started saying, why? Over and over. And I broke down. Eventually, the tears came, and they didn't stop. They didn't stop for an hour. I remember sitting there thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? And my one-man crusade against American Christianity, left, right, whatever, just was cut to ribbons right then and there. I went home for the funeral. I prayed. I asked God for strength to be there for my family in a real way. And he did. I stood there. And I was adjusted to absorbing emotional stress at that point for other reasons.